Get on your knees. Vanessa Whitmore said it with a smile, as casually as if she were asking for another glass of champagne, but the words silenced the entire dining room. 30 guests sat beneath the warm glow of crystal chandeliers inside Adrian Park's Chicago mansion, surrounded by polished walnut, white marble, and enough quiet wealth to make ordinary people lower their voices without knowing why. At the center of it all stood Simone Carter, the Black Maid Vanessa had decided to humiliate. Champagne spread across the marble floor between them, sparkling beneath the lights. Vanessa had knocked over the glass only seconds earlier, yet now she pointed toward the spill as though Simone had created it. You heard me, Vanessa continued. Clean it up properly. A nervous laugh escaped from somewhere near the end of the table. Another guest immediately looked down at his plate. Simone said nothing. Her dark brown eyes moved from the champagne to Vanessa's perfectly composed face. She could feel every person in the room waiting for her reaction. Some expected obedience. Some expected embarrassment. Vanessa expected both. No, ma'am, Simone said. 2 words. Soft. Controlled. Final. The nervous laughter vanished. At the far end of the table, Adrian Park slowly lowered his champagne glass. The 38-year-old Korean Mafia boss had spent the evening speaking little, watching much. His tailored charcoal suit looked almost black beneath the chandelier light, and his expression revealed nothing as his attention settled fully on Simone. Vanessa blinked. Excuse me. Simone reached for a clean towel from the service cart. I said no, ma'am. Do you understand who you are speaking to? Yes. Simone's voice remained steady. And I will clean the spill because that is part of my work. She placed the towel neatly beside the wet marble. But I will not get on my knees so you can entertain your friends by humiliating me. Someone inhaled sharply. Vanessa's smile disappeared. Across the room, Mrs. Bennett, the senior housekeeper, froze beside the doorway. She knew exactly how quickly an employee could disappear from a household like this for challenging the wrong guest. Simone knew it too. Her hands were calm anyway. Vanessa glanced toward Adrian, expecting him to correct the maid, perhaps apologize on behalf of his staff. Adrian did neither. He simply watched. That silence unsettled Vanessa more than anger would have. Adrian, she said with a small laugh, are you really going to let your maid speak to me like this? His eyes remained on Simone. I heard what she said. Nothing more. Vanessa's cheeks warmed. Simone bent only far enough to place the towel over the champagne, then used the long-handled floor mop from her cart to clean the marble while remaining upright. She worked efficiently, without apology and without performance. Within seconds, the floor was spotless. Simone returned the mop to the cart. Is there anything else the table needs? Vanessa stared at her. The question sounded professional, but everyone understood what had just happened. Simone had refused to surrender her dignity, and Adrian had refused to punish her for it. Vanessa looked around the table and realized the room no longer belonged to her. Her embarrassment hardened into something colder. Then her hand suddenly moved toward her wrist. Her eyes widened. My bracelet. Conversation stopped again. Vanessa searched beneath her napkin, beside her chair, then inside her evening bag. My diamond bracelet is gone. Her gaze slowly lifted toward Simone. And you were the last person inside my dressing room. This time, when the room fell silent, Adrian Park did not reach for his glass. 3 weeks earlier, Simone Carter had entered the Park mansion through the staff entrance at exactly 7 in the morning, carrying a modest handbag and wearing a freshly pressed Navy uniform. She had expected wealth. She had not expected silence. The mansion sat above Lake Michigan behind iron gates and carefully trimmed hedges, its marble hallways reflecting morning light from windows nearly 20 feet high. Everything seemed designed to announce power without speaking. Mrs. Bennett gave Simone the tour with brisk efficiency. Mr. Park values privacy, punctuality, and discretion. Simone nodded. Understood. Guests are treated respectfully, but you are not. Required to tolerate inappropriate behavior. If there is a problem, you come to me. Simone remembered that sentence. She would remember it even more clearly 3 weeks later. During her first days, she worked quietly. She learned which silver required hand polishing, which flowers Adrian's mother preferred in the breakfast room, and which members of the household staff needed coffee before conversation. She never wandered into private rooms without permission. She never listened at closed doors. Most importantly, she never confused professionalism with invisibility. Adrian Park noticed her on the fourth morning. He was crossing the foyer while speaking on the telephone when he saw Simone stop a young kitchen assistant from carrying an overloaded tray up the staircase. "Make 2 trips," Simone said. "Nobody gives prizes for dropping 20 pounds of china." The young woman laughed nervously and divided the load. Adrian continued walking, but his eyes lingered for half a second. 2 days later, he noticed Simone again when his mother arrived unexpectedly for lunch. Mrs. Park's medication alarm sounded from her handbag while everyone else was distracted by conversation. Simone heard it, quietly brought her a glass of water, and returned to work without announcing what she had done. Adrian saw that too. Simone never asked for praise. That made her unusually difficult to ignore. Vanessa Whitmore first appeared at the mansion during Simone's second week. She arrived in a cream-colored luxury sedan wearing a designer coat and the confidence of someone accustomed to doors opening before she reached them. "You must be new," Vanessa said when Simone accepted her coat. 3 weeks soon, ma'am." Vanessa looked at her name tag. "Samantha?" "Simone." "Right." Vanessa smiled without apology. Later, Simone found the same expensive coat lying across a chair less than 10 feet from the closet. "I thought staff handled those things," Vanessa said. Simone picked it up. "We do." The following visit, Vanessa called her Samantha again. The visit after that, she requested coffee, waited until Simone placed it down, then claimed she had asked for tea. Simone replaced it without complaint. Vanessa watched her carefully. She was testing for irritation and finding none. What Vanessa could not see was that Simone noticed everything too. She noticed how Vanessa's voice changed when Adrian entered a room. She noticed how warmly Vanessa addressed wealthy guests, and how quickly that warmth disappeared around staff. She noticed the little humiliations disguised as accidents. A napkin dropped deliberately beside Simone's shoe. A handbag placed on the floor with the expectation that Simone would retrieve it. A dinner plate sent back untouched because the garnish faced the wrong direction. Simone handled every request professionally, but she never hurried when Vanessa snapped her fingers, never apologized for mistakes she had not made, and never lowered her eyes simply because Vanessa expected it. Adrian noticed that most of all, by the night of the gala, Vanessa had mistaken Simone's restraint for weakness. Standing before 30 guests with her missing bracelet suddenly becoming the center of attention, Simone finally understood what Vanessa had been building toward. This was no longer about champagne on marble. Vanessa wanted the entire room to decide what kind of woman Simone was before Simone had the chance to speak. Vanessa let the accusation hang in the air long enough for every guest to understand exactly what she was suggesting. Simone stood beside the service cart, her posture unchanged, while 30 pairs of eyes moved between the missing bracelet and the Black Maid who had just refused to be humiliated. "I left it on the vanity in the dressing room," Vanessa said. "I remember because I removed it before dinner." Mrs. Bennett stepped forward. Several staff members were working upstairs this evening. Vanessa barely looked at her. "But Simone was the one assigned to my room." Simone remembered entering the dressing room shortly before 7. She had replaced 2 hand towels, collected an empty water glass, and adjusted the curtains after Vanessa complained about the sunset reflecting in the mirror. The diamond bracelet had been there, resting beside a silver perfume bottle. Simone had noticed it because the stones caught the light. "I saw your bracelet on the vanity when I entered," Simone said. Vanessa folded her arms. "How convenient." A murmur moved through the table. Adrian remained standing near his chair, silent and watchful. Simone understood something important then. If she became defensive, Vanessa would call it guilt. If she became angry, Vanessa would call it disrespect. So Simone gave her neither. "What exactly are you accusing me of, Ms. Whitmore?" Vanessa blinked. She had expected excuses, not a direct question. "I think that is obvious." "Then say it clearly." The room tightened. Vanessa's expression hardened. "I think you took my bracelet." Simone nodded once. "Thank you. Now everyone knows what we are discussing." She reached for her handbag beneath the service station, but instead of opening it, she placed it carefully on the table. Vanessa smiled. "Finally." "No," Simone rested one hand beside the bag. "If you believe I stole something worth that much money, then this is no longer a private embarrassment. It is a security matter." Vanessa's smile faded. "Open the bag. Call security." Why would an innocent person refuse? Because innocence does not mean surrendering every boundary the moment someone wealthy points a finger. Several guests shifted uncomfortably. Adrian's gaze sharpened. Simone continued, her voice calm enough to make Vanessa's impatience seem louder by comparison. Mr. Park has cameras covering the hallways and common areas. Check them. Confirm when I entered your dressing room, when I left, and who went near it afterward. Then, if security has a legitimate reason to inspect my belongings, Mrs. Bennett can be present. Vanessa gave a short laugh. You have rehearsed this very well. No, ma'am. I have simply learned not to panic when someone wants me to. Silence. Adrian stepped away from his chair. Daniel. His security director appeared near the dining room entrance almost immediately. Sir. Adrian looked toward Simone's handbag, then toward Vanessa. Nobody touches Ms. Carter's property. Vanessa stared at him. Adrian continued. Secure the relevant hallway footage and review every person who entered that floor after 7 this evening. Of course. Vanessa stepped closer. Adrian, this is ridiculous. She was in my room. My bracelet disappears, and suddenly we need an investigation? Adrian finally looked directly at her. You made an accusation in my home. I am giving you the opportunity to prove it. The words were quiet, but Vanessa went still. Simone noticed something else. Vanessa was not looking toward her handbag anymore. She was looking toward the doorway. Nervously, Daniel returned several minutes later carrying a tablet. His expression was different now. Mr. Park, there is a problem. Adrian took the tablet. What problem? Daniel hesitated. The hallway recording is complete until 7:12. Then 11 minutes are missing. Vanessa turned toward Simone with immediate triumph. There. What more do you need? But Simone was no longer watching Vanessa. She was staring at the antique clock visible through the dining room archway, remembering exactly where she had been when it chimed that evening. 11 missing minutes did not frighten her. They gave her something better than an accusation. They gave her a timeline. The antique clock became Simone's first witness. She looked at its brass face through the dining room archway and remembered the 7:15 chime rolling through the mansion while she carried a coffee tray toward the library. What time does the missing footage begin? She asked. Daniel checked the tablet. 7:12. And when does it return? 7:23. Vanessa gave an impatient sigh. Why does that matter? Simone kept her attention on Daniel. At 7:15, I was in the library serving coffee to Mr. Park's guests. Several heads turned. Adrian's expression sharpened. Can you confirm that? Daniel tapped through the security system. The library has a separate camera network. Vanessa's confidence flickered for only a second. She could have gone upstairs afterward. Perhaps, Simone said. That is why we check instead of guessing. Daniel opened another recording. On the tablet, Simone appeared entering the library at 7:14 carrying a silver tray. At 7:15, the grandfather clock could be heard chiming faintly from the hallway. Simone moved between the guests, collected empty cups, then remained in the room while one of Adrian's associates asked for fresh coffee. She did not leave until 7:24. Daniel looked up. Miss Carter was in the library during the entire missing interval. Silence spread across the dining room. Vanessa's fingers tightened around the edge of her chair. Then someone else took it. That is possible, Simone replied. But you accused me. Vanessa turned toward Adrian. I made a reasonable assumption. Adrian's voice remained calm. You made a public accusation before asking a single question. Vanessa's face hardened. Are you taking her side? There should not be sides when facts are available. Simone noticed Vanessa glance toward the doorway again. The movement was small, but it was the third time she had done it. Beyond that doorway was the foyer, and beyond the foyer was the front drive where the guests' vehicles waited. Simone thought back to the hour before dinner. Vanessa had arrived with her personal assistant, Claire Dawson, a quiet young woman who had spent most of the evening carrying Vanessa's coat, phone, and evening bag. Daniel, Simone said, does the exterior system cover the driveway? Vanessa turned quickly. Adrian noticed. It does, Daniel answered. Why? Simone chose her words carefully. Ms. Whitmore said she removed the bracelet before dinner. If it left the upstairs floor during those 11 minutes, someone had to carry it somewhere. The hallway camera is not the only camera in this house. Adrian looked at Daniel. Check the stairwell, foyer, service corridor, and driveway from 7:12 through 7:30. Vanessa stood. This has gone far enough. No one answered her. Daniel began moving through recordings. The guests who had watched Simone with suspicion minutes earlier were now watching Vanessa. Then Daniel stopped. Sir. He turned the tablet toward Adrian. The footage showed Claire crossing the foyer at 7:19, walking quickly toward the front entrance with Vanessa's small silver evening pouch in her hand. Vanessa's face went pale. She was getting something from the car. Adrian looked at the screen. With your evening pouch? Vanessa said nothing. Simone did not smile. She did not need to. Adrian handed the tablet back to Daniel. Find Claire. Mrs. Bennett quietly spoke from beside the doorway. She left the dining area about 10 minutes ago. Adrian's eyes settled on Vanessa. Then check the driveway camera and contact the gatehouse. Nobody needs to be embarrassed further. We are simply going to find out where that bracelet went. Vanessa stared across the spotless marble at Simone, and for the first time that evening, the woman who had demanded someone else get on her knees looked as though she wanted the floor beneath her to disappear. Daniel returned less than 5 minutes later, but the expression on his face told Adrian that the question was no longer whether Simone had taken the bracelet. It was who had tried to make everyone believe she had. Claire followed several steps behind him, pale and visibly uncomfortable, clutching her phone with both hands. Vanessa immediately stood. Claire, tell them why you went outside. Claire looked at Vanessa, then at Adrian, then finally at Simone. I was asked to take something to the car. The room became so quiet that the faint hum of the ventilation system seemed suddenly loud. Adrian remained beside the table. What were you asked to take? Claire hesitated. Vanessa interrupted. My evening pouch. I already explained that. Adrian did not raise his voice. I asked Claire. Vanessa slowly sat down. Claire swallowed. The silver pouch, sir. Was anything inside it? Another pause. Yes. Vanessa's face tightened. Claire. That single word carried a warning, but Claire seemed exhausted by whatever she had been carrying since 7:19. Ms. Whitmore gave me her bracelet upstairs, she said. Several guests shifted in their chairs. Simone remained completely still. Adrian's gaze moved to Vanessa. Before or after the hallway recording disappeared, Claire looked confused. I do not know anything about the cameras. Ms. Whitmore called me upstairs and told me to put the bracelet inside the pouch, take it to the car, and leave it in the center console. Vanessa stood again. That is not what happened. Daniel lifted the tablet. The driveway footage shows Ms. Dawson placing the pouch inside your vehicle at 7:21. Then check the car, Adrian said. Daniel nodded toward another member of security near the doorway. The man stepped outside. Vanessa looked around the room as if searching for someone willing to defend her. Minutes earlier, several guests had watched Simone as though suspicion itself were evidence. Now those same people avoided Simone's eyes. She noticed, but she offered them no rescue from their discomfort. The security officer returned carrying the silver pouch. Daniel opened it over the table and carefully removed a diamond bracelet. Crystal light scattered across the stones. No one spoke. Vanessa stared at it. Simone looked at Vanessa. You knew where it was. Vanessa's composure finally cracked. You embarrassed me. Simone's expression did not change. I refused to kneel. In front of everyone. You asked me in front of everyone. Vanessa turned toward Adrian. She has been disrespectful to me since the day she arrived. Simone almost smiled at the absurdity, but she did not. I corrected my name when you called me Samantha. I did not apologize for things I did not do. And tonight I refuse to let you turn my job into entertainment. Vanessa's voice sharpened. You are a maid. Simone held her gaze. Yes, I am. The simple answer seemed to unsettle Vanessa more than denial could have. There is nothing shameful about honest work. You needed there to be. Adrian's eyes moved slowly from Simone to Vanessa. Something had changed in his face. Not anger. Recognition. He finally understood that the missing bracelet had never been about jewelry. Vanessa had created an accusation because Simone's dignity offended the hierarchy Vanessa believed everyone should obey. Adrian turned to Daniel. Preserve every recording from tonight. Then he faced Claire. Thank you for telling the truth. Mrs. Bennett will make sure you have a safe ride home. Claire nodded, visibly relieved. Vanessa stared at Adrian. And me? Adrian adjusted the cuff of his charcoal suit and looked at the woman who had entered his home expecting status to protect her from consequences. You wanted everyone in this room to judge Ms. Carter. His voice was quiet. Now they have the facts. I think it is time they judge the right person. Vanessa looked around the dining room, but no one rushed to defend her. The same guests who had watched Simone with suspicion now sat beneath the chandeliers in uncomfortable silence, confronted by the bracelet glittering on the table and the truth they had been willing to ignore. Adrian, surely you do not believe I planned all of this, Vanessa said. Adrian's expression remained unreadable. You told Claire to hide the bracelet in your car. Because I was upset. Then you accused Ms. Carter of stealing it. Vanessa glanced toward Simone. She challenged me in front of everyone. Simone stood beside the service cart, composed and silent. She no longer needed to defend herself. The evidence had already done that. Adrian walked slowly toward Vanessa. You were never threatened by my maid. Vanessa stiffened. That is not what this is about. No. Adrian stopped several feet away. His voice remained quiet. Then explain why a woman with your education, money, and influence needed to manufacture a theft accusation against someone who simply refused to be humiliated. Vanessa had no answer. Adrian glanced toward Simone, then back at Vanessa. You were threatened by a woman you could not make feel small. The room went still. Vanessa's face reddened. You are choosing an employee over me. I am choosing the truth over a lie. Adrian reached toward the small velvet box beside his place setting. Earlier that evening, Vanessa had placed it there as a private gift, a symbol of the closeness she believed existed between them. Adrian picked it up and returned it to her side of the table. Take this with you. Vanessa stared at the box. What are you saying? I am saying you are no longer welcome in this house. No shouting followed. No threat. Adrian simply turned toward Daniel. Please have Ms. Whitmore's car brought around. Daniel nodded. Vanessa looked toward the guests again. Several lowered their eyes. One woman who had laughed when Vanessa ordered Simone to kneel now appeared deeply embarrassed. Vanessa collected her evening bag and the recovered bracelet. Before leaving, she stopped beside Simone. You must be very pleased with yourself. Simone met her gaze. No, Vanessa seemed surprised. I wanted to finish my shift. You turned it into this. For the first time all evening, Vanessa had nothing to say. She walked toward the foyer, her footsteps fading across the marble until the front door closed behind her. Only then did Adrian turn toward the remaining guests. Dinner is over. Chairs moved quietly. Coats were collected. Conversations stayed low. Nobody laughed. Within 20 minutes, the grand dining room that had held 30 people was almost empty. Simone began gathering untouched glasses from the table. Adrian approached her. Ms. Carter. She looked up. Sir, you should not have had to prove your innocence tonight. Simone considered his words. No, I should not have. Adrian accepted the answer without defensiveness. I also should have stopped the situation before it reached that point. Simone glanced toward the marble floor where the champagne had been spilled earlier. You could have. The honesty landed harder than gratitude would have. Adrian nodded slowly. You are right. Simone lifted another glass onto the tray. Power means more when you use it before someone has to beg for fairness. Adrian became silent. All his life, people had praised his authority. Simone had just shown him its failure. As she carried the tray toward the kitchen, Adrian looked around the empty room and understood that Vanessa was not the only person who had been judged that night. So had he. The next morning, Simone arrived at 7 exactly, just as she had every day since joining the household. The mansion looked almost ordinary without 30 luxury cars lining the drive and voices filling the marble halls. Pale sunlight stretched across the foyer, touching the same floor where Vanessa had spilled champagne less than 12 hours earlier. Simone paused there for only a moment before continuing toward the staff room. She had changed into her navy uniform and begun organizing the morning service when Mrs. Bennett entered carrying a folder. Mr. Park wants. The entire household staff in the breakfast room at 8. Simone looked up. Why? He did not say. By 8, 14 employees stood around the long walnut table. Kitchen staff, housekeepers, drivers, groundskeepers, and security personnel exchanged uncertain glances. Adrian entered without an entourage, wearing a dark suit and carrying a single sheet of paper. He remained standing. What happened last night should not have happened. The room became quiet. Simone watched from near the window. Adrian continued. A guest deliberately humiliated a member of this staff, made a false accusation, and was allowed too much time to do both before I intervened. Several employees looked toward Simone. Adrian did not. That failure belongs to me. Mrs. Bennett's eyebrows lifted slightly. Few people in Adrian Park's world had ever heard him claim responsibility so plainly. Effective today, every employee in this house has the right to report disrespectful conduct from a guest without risking employment or wages. No guest is permitted to demand personal searches, use degrading language, or treat staff as entertainment. Security concerns go through security. Employment concerns go through Mrs. Bennet. If a guest cannot accept those boundaries, that guest leaves. Adrian placed the paper on the table. This applies whether the guest is a business associate, a friend, or someone close to me. Nobody spoke for several seconds. Then Mrs. Bennet nodded. Understood. The meeting ended quietly. Simone remained behind while the others returned to work. Adrian noticed. Something wrong. No, Simone glanced at the policy on the table. You listened. You were right. That does not happen often around here, does it? The corner of Adrian's mouth almost moved. People usually choose different words. Simone picked up a clean cloth and walked toward the dining room. Adrian followed several feet behind. At the doorway, she stopped. A young server named Lily was already cleaning the breakfast table. When she noticed Adrian, nervousness overtook her hands and a folded linen napkin slipped onto the marble floor. Lily immediately bent down. I am sorry, Mr. Park. Adrian looked. At the napkin. For what? Lily froze. I dropped it. Then pick it up. That is all. His tone held no irritation. Lily retrieved the napkin, visibly relieved. Simone watched him. Adrian noticed. What? Nothing. That expression says otherwise. Simone returned to polishing the sideboard. Yesterday, someone wanted me on my knees because she believed my job made me less important. Today, someone apologized to you because a napkin touched the floor. Adrian looked toward Lily, then around the immaculate room. People are afraid of making mistakes here. Yes. Because of me? Simone did not soften the answer. Sometimes. Adrian absorbed that in silence. He had removed Vanessa from his home, but consequences were easier than change. Change required noticing what his power did even when he never intended to use it. He reached down, picked up a second napkin that had slipped unnoticed beneath a chair, and placed it on the table himself. Simone watched without comment. Adrian straightened. Do not look so surprised, Miss Carter. I am not surprised, sir. What are you then? Simone met his eyes, waiting to see if you still do it when nobody is watching. Adrian stood completely still. Then Simone returned to work, leaving the most powerful man in the house with a challenge no amount of money could answer. Over the next 2 weeks, Adrian discovered that changing a rule was easier than changing a culture. Employees still lowered their voices when he entered a room. New servers still apologized for harmless mistakes. Drivers still waited for permission before taking coffee from the kitchen during long shifts. None of it had been written into household policy. It had simply grown around Adrian's reputation until fear became routine. Simone noticed him noticing. One Tuesday morning, she entered the breakfast room carrying fresh flowers and found Adrian moving his own coffee cup from the table to the service counter. Mrs. Bennet stared at him as though he had rearranged the furniture. Sir, Lily can take that. Adrian set the cup down. I have 2 hands. Simone continued arranging the flowers. Someone is practicing. Adrian glanced at her. Nobody was. Watching. Mrs. Bennet was. She does not count. Mrs. Bennet raised an eyebrow. I heard that. Simone smiled and returned to the roses. Small moments followed. Adrian began thanking staff members by name. He stopped allowing guests to snap their fingers for service. When an associate left muddy footprints across the foyer and laughed that someone else could clean them, Adrian quietly handed him a towel. The man cleaned the floor himself. Nobody needed an explanation. Then, on Friday evening, Vanessa returned. She did not enter the mansion. She stood outside the front doors beneath the warm porch lights, dressed elegantly, but without the confidence she had carried at the gala. Mrs. Bennet found Simone in the pantry. Ms. Whitmore is asking to speak with you. Simone looked up. With me? Only if you agree. Simone considered it, then walked to the foyer. Adrian was already there, several feet from the door. You do not have to see her, he said. I know. Simone stepped outside anyway. Vanessa held an envelope, but made no attempt to move closer. I came to apologize. Simone waited. Vanessa looked uncomfortable. What I did was wrong. The bracelet, the accusation, all of it. Yes, it was. Vanessa seemed startled by the absence of reassurance. I was embarrassed when you refused me in front of everyone. Being embarrassed did not force you to lie. Vanessa lowered her eyes. No, she offered the envelope. This is a written apology. Simone accepted it, but did not open it. Why now? Vanessa glanced through the glass doors toward Adrian. Simone followed her gaze. If this apology is for him, keep it. Vanessa looked back quickly. It is not. Then do not look at him while you give it. The words were calm, but Vanessa understood. She faced Simone fully. I treated your job like it determined your worth. I was wrong. Simone studied her for several seconds. I accept that you came here and said it. Vanessa waited for more. None came. Forgiveness was not a performance Simone owed anyone. Vanessa nodded and walked toward her waiting car. When Simone returned inside, Adrian remained by the foyer table. You could have refused to see her. I could have. Why did you not? Simone placed the unopened envelope beside her handbag. Because accountability should have a door to walk through when it arrives honestly. Adrian considered that. Do you forgive her? Simone looked across the marble floor that had once held spilled champagne and 30 silent witnesses. That is between me and time. Adrian nodded. He had finally learned not to demand an easier answer. Simone picked up her handbag and headed toward the staff corridor as her shift ended. Behind her, Adrian noticed a small hand towel lying near the entrance. No staff member was nearby. No guest was watching. He bent down, picked it up, folded it once, and placed it neatly on the table. Simone saw his reflection in the hallway mirror. This time, she kept walking without turning around. He had passed the test precisely because he did not know there had been one. 3 months later, another dinner filled the Park mansion with crystal light, polished silver, and voices from people accustomed to being welcomed into powerful rooms. But the atmosphere had changed. Guests greeted Mrs. Bennet by name. Servers moved without nervous glances toward Adrian. Nobody snapped fingers or left coats on the floor. Simone noticed these things because she remembered when they had been different. Near the end of dinner, a young server named Lily carried a tray through the dining room when one linen napkin slipped from the edge and landed beside a guest's chair. Lily instinctively bent down, but the guest reached it first. I have it, he said, placing it on the table. Lily smiled. Thank you. Across the room, Simone caught Adrian watching. He said nothing. He did not need to. Later, after the guests departed, Simone returned to the dining room and found Adrian standing beside the same stretch of marble where Vanessa had spilled champagne months earlier. You are working late, he said. So are you. I live here. Convenient excuse. A faint smile crossed his face. Simone began checking the sideboard before morning service. Adrian remained where he was. Mrs. Bennet tells me nobody has filed a guest complaint in 6 weeks. Maybe your guests learned the rules. Or maybe I finally did. Simone looked at him. There was no performance in his expression, no expectation of praise. That night changed this house, Adrian said. It needed changing. So did I. Simone closed the cabinet. You figured that out eventually. Adrian nodded toward the marble. I keep thinking about what you said. Power means more when you use it before someone has to beg for fairness. Simone remembered the words. Do you disagree? No. I think I spent years believing respect was something people showed me because of who I was. He paused. You made me understand that fear can look exactly like respect when nobody feels safe enough to tell you the difference. The room became quiet. Simone leaned lightly against the sideboard. That realization probably cost you less than the chandelier. Adrian glanced upward. Significantly less. She smiled. Then Lily entered carrying folded linens. One cloth slipped from the stack and fell between Simone and Adrian. Lily stopped. For one brief second, all three looked down at it. Months earlier, that simple moment might have carried embarrassment, hierarchy, or expectation. Adrian bent first. Simone reached at the same time. Their hands stopped inches apart, and Simone gave him an amused look. Go ahead, Mr. Park. Adrian picked up the cloth and handed it to Lily. There you are. Thank you, sir. Lily continued toward the kitchen without apology, without fear. Simone watched her leave. That is different. Adrian looked around the dining room. Yes. The following morning, Simone crossed the foyer at 7 exactly and saw sunlight stretching across spotless marble. Mrs. Bennet was laughing with 2 kitchen employees. Adrian stood near the staircase drinking coffee while speaking to a driver about his daughter's college application. Nobody became silent when he approached. Nobody hurried to appear busy. Simone understood then that the real consequence of that terrible gala had not been Vanessa leaving. It was everyone else finally being allowed to stand taller. Adrian noticed Simone and gave her a respectful nod. Good morning, Miss Carter. Good morning, Mr. Park. She continued toward the breakfast room, carrying. Herself exactly as she had on her first day. Simone had never needed a powerful man to give her dignity. She had only refused to surrender it when someone tried to take it away, and by refusing, she had taught an entire house what respect looked like.